Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another DFO Fantasy Show. It is Thursday, January 15th, and I'm your host, Brock Segan, managing fantasy editor at dailyfaceoff.com. And today we have fantasy hockey news and notes. We've got Brock's lock of the day, and then we will be joined by our guy, Dylan Berthiaume. We're going to go over the best weekend streaming options for week 15 of the fantasy hockey season, making sure you are maximizing those roster spots and ensuring a victory here in week 15. But let's start with the fantasy hockey news and notes. Yesterday, Dan Vladar left the game with an undisclosed injury and did not return. Obviously, this would be brutal news for the Philadelphia Flyers, who, he's been the only goalie they've been able to trust this year. And if he misses an extended period of time, they're going to be in trouble. Sam Ersson has not performed well for them, and it's just going to be really, really difficult for them to maintain what they've built so far if Dan Vladar misses an extended period of time. Now to Buffalo. Unfortunately, Josh Norris left Wednesday's game with an upper body injury and did not return. He's questionable to play Thursday versus Montreal. We don't know the severity of it yet. Obviously, they'll provide an update on his status before today's game. Hopefully, nothing serious for a player that has missed a lot of time with upper body injuries in his career. Let's go to Colorado now, where Mackenzie Blackwood was activated from IR on Wednesday, clearing the way for him to return, possibly start Friday versus the Predators. Scott Wedgwood was banged up and backed up in their last game, so possible for Blackwood to return and start Friday. Although Scott Wedgwood is a former Nashville Predator, if they want to give him the start against his former team, they may do that, and Blackwood could return in a backup role. But nonetheless, he is back, ready to go for the Avs. Now let's go to San Jose, where Will Smith was a full participant in Wednesday's practice, but will not play Thursday in Washington, although he has not been ruled out to play Friday against the Red Wings. So his return is getting closer. It could come as soon as Friday. Now to Washington, they could get two big players back in the lineup on Thursday. Jacob Chychrun was a full participant in Wednesday's practice and is expected to play Thursday against the Sharks. Chychrun missed time due to illness, so the fact that he was back at practice basically confirms that he's going to be back in the lineup on Thursday. It's not confirmed, but it's looking very likely. What also is not confirmed is that Tom Wilson is got a chance to play. It's unconfirmed at the moment, but he was back at practice on Wednesday. His status will probably be determined after the morning skate here on Thursday, but he does have a chance to play, according to head coach Spencer Carberry. Wilson and Chychrun could be back in the lineup for the Capitals tonight. And then somebody that will not be in the lineup this evening is Neil Pionk, who is week to week with a lower body injury for the Winnipeg Jets. So a big blow on the blue line for the Jets. That's going to do it for fantasy hockey news and notes. Now let's get to Brock's lock of the day. This segment is a presentation of Betway. Join the action and download the Betway app. Create an account today and enjoy our sign-up bonus, 18 plus, and please play responsibly. So, yesterday was brutal. Jesper Bratt did absolutely nothing for us. So we move on, try to get better today, try to get a W on Thursday. Let's bring up the 5v5 model. I was flying blind yesterday because the model was undergoing some maintenance before I recorded, which is what landed me on Jesper Bratt. It went awful for a guy that really improved his shot volume as of late. He did not have very good shot volume yesterday. So hopefully to get back in the win column tonight. We're going to scroll down a little bit. Ben Kendall looks okay. Bertuzzi looks solid. Not the best matchups here against the Penguins. So we're going to scroll down a bit, try to find somebody with a good price, and that's going to be Boone Jenner for us today. So we're going to go Boone Jenner over 2.5 shots on goal at plus 130. Jenner has hit this prop in 9 of his last 13 games. That is a 69.2% hit rate, or the equivalent of minus 225. And tonight you get it at plus 130. During that stretch, he's averaged 2.8 shots on goal and 4.8 shot attempts per game. His usage and his volume are very consistent. He's usually guys going to see like 17, 18 minutes. You don't really have to worry about that. But his volume is also really, really consistent. During that stretch, he has never had a game with less than 3 shot attempts in a game. And he's actually only had 1 of 13 games where he had less than 4 shot attempts in a game. So he's really consistently trying to get the puck towards the net, which is, good for us. And we like his chances to hit over 2.5 shots on goal tonight, especially against the Vancouver Canucks team that is giving up the 5th most shots against in the NHL over their last 10 games. So you can get this line at plus 130 over at Betway. It feels like excellent value to me. So give me Boone Jenner over 2.5 shots on goal. And now we will welcome in our friend, Dylan Berthiaume. D, how's it going today, bud?
Doing good, bud. I like that we record these on Thursdays. Gives me, 4 or 5 days to really sleep off that devastating Packers loss on Saturday. So we're fine now. It's fine. Got the Jays sweater on, so it's just been a few months of pretty epic disappointment and collapses for me. But that's sports, and we rally on. We're here to talk about some streamers. There's nothing I'd rather be doing right now. How you doing, bro?
Good. I mean, at least you got a playoff game, but I get, at this point, like, was it really worth it? I'm not sure. But yeah, we're in the grind of the NHL season now. We got half a season to go. NFL for both of us is well behind us. And baseball coming up. It's an exciting time here. Olympics coming up. A very exciting time in sports. So I hope everyone is ready because we've got some streaming options this weekend. We've got 3 teams that have the Sunday schedule that we're always looking for. We'll start with the Detroit Red Wings, and then we also have the St. Louis Blues and the Tampa Bay Lightning with that Sunday schedule. So those are the 3 teams we're going to be talking about today. Dia, I was joking with you before the show. I talked about Andrew Kopp on Monday. I talked about Andrew Kopp on Wednesday. Might as well talk about him again here on Thursday. So let's start with the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, I was going to say Kopp seems like he's been one of the, or I guess very quietly been one of the hottest players in the league for the last month and a half, but he's definitely been getting his flowers on this show of late. But I mean, yeah, you got to talk about him right now. Center left wing eligible, still just 11% owned. He's got 7 goals, 12 assists, 19 points in his last 21 games. Pretty crazy. Skating on that second line and power play unit alongside Patrick Kane, together along with line mate Alex DeBrincat, 3 of them averaging 28 scoring chances, 11 high danger chances per 60. So pretty sustainable there, especially with the amount of ice time they're getting. I think as long as Kopp is playing the pivot between those two, he's going to be worth streaming and even worth holding on to your roster if he's staying as hot as he is right now. So yeah, he's one of my favorite options on this weekend slate. Still almost available in 90% of leagues. I think in shallower formats, I would still lean to Patrick Kane before him. Kane is right wing eligible, 39% owned. Second line, second power play unit, as we said, with Kopp and DeBrincat. Got off to a slow start after his return from injury in late December, but has picked it up of late. 4 points in his last 4 games. So I think to me, he's a very obvious target in shallower leagues. But yeah, just a ton of good options across the board here for the Red Wings. JVR, left wing eligible, 2% owned, cooking on that top power play unit right now. 4 goals, 6 assists for 10 points in his last 9 games. That's about as hot as JVR will get. Even at his peak, he was never really a point per game player, more of a goal scorer than anything else, topping out around 60 points. So yeah, right now, absolute red hot for JVR. I think he's an excellent option. Should be available still, even in those deepest formats. Like I said, available in 98% of leagues. And I think even Emmett Finney, 6% owned. He's been cold of late, but he's still in a good spot this weekend if this lineup holds. Second power play unit while skating with Larkin on the top line. Just plenty of quality options coming out of Motown this weekend. Anyone else I'm leaving out here, Brock, that you want to give some love?
No, that was pretty much it. I'm a little disappointed with how this top line has been rolling as of late, but I've been talking about the second line between Kopp and Kane for a while now. Like, the Red Wings continue to shuffle this lineup. That's the one line that stays constant because they've been just so fantastic. So yeah, I think my focus would certainly be on Kopp and Kane. For JVR though, man, like I talked about him on Monday as well. 11 goals in his last 22 games, literally on a 41 goal pace over the last couple months, which is just incredible. One of the better depth signings in the league this offseason. And I know you, as a Maple Leafs fan, very familiar with JVR's game. He's nothing flashy about his game, but boy, is he effective at what he does in front of the net. Any final thoughts on the Red Wings before we get to the St. Louis Blues?
No, let's move it on. Let's get to the Blues. Very excited to talk about the Blues.
just before we get to St. Louis here, the Red Wings as well, they have great options, but they also have a fantastic schedule this weekend. Friday against the Sharks, and then home to the Senators as well on Sunday. So it obviously the Sharks having a hard time keeping the puck out of their own net. The Senators, not only are they having a hard time keeping the puck out of their own net, but they're also on a back-to-back, second half of a back-to-back there. So could be James Reimer. Even if it's not Levi Marilainen, it hasn't been particularly sharp. We're unclear on the Linus Ullmark situation. So really good matchups for the Red Wings tonight as well. But let's get to the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, who don't have a good matchup spread this weekend, and that's the Blues. They're hosting the Lightning on Friday and then are in Edmonton on Sunday. Typically this would be the type of team we love to see with that Friday-Sunday schedule because basically the entire team is available to stream in standard formats right now. The issue is they're just not scoring a lot of goals Blues averaging just 2.33 goals per game since the start of December. That's the fourth worst rate in the league over that stretch. And like I said, a pair of pretty tough games this weekend against the Lightning and Oilers. So I'd much rather look to the Red Wings first this weekend. But if you get beat to the punch, then I'd probably just focus on that first power play unit for St. Louis. You got Jordan Kyrou at 43% owned for those shallower leagues, Braden Shen at 12%, Jake Neighbors 10% owned, and Jimmy Snuggerud at 5% owned. That's probably the order I'd be going after them as well. I think Kyrou with his shot volume makes for a relatively high floor play in shallower formats, just not a lot of ceiling here when the whole team's barely scoring more than 2 goals a game. I think Shen, Neighbors, Snuggerud, all a bit more of a dice roll. And I really don't think there's any need to go any deeper than that, given the options we have in Detroit and then coming up out of Tampa Bay this weekend as well. But what are you thinking, Brock? Am I underselling the Blues here? Any one of those four, anyone else on the roster that you're particularly excited about this weekend?
No, it's hard to be excited about the St. Louis Blues outside of my boy Joel Hofer. I think I might have a little bit more interest in Jimmy Snuggerud than you do. I would agree that Jordan Kyrou is probably option number one. But realistically, with how little this team is scoring right now, you kind of just got to go with the guys that have the best floor, and that's Jordan Kyrou and that's Jimmy Snuggerud right now. And, at least you're going to get something out of those guys because they shoot the puck, and then you just have to hope that they're the ones that, happen to find the back of the net. Snuggerud's starting to fire the puck a ton. It's been a very small sample size here, but his last 4 games, he's playing 18 and a half minutes per night. He's averaging 4.5 shots on goal and 8.3 shot attempts per game during that stretch. He had 2 of those 3 games, he had double-digit shot attempts. So he's shooting the puck a ton right now. I think that he's one that I would look to. He's also a lot more widely available, so I think the chances of you being able to pick up Kyrou are probably relatively slim. I know he's starting to hit the wire in a lot of leagues, which isn't surprising given their struggles, but I think Snuggerud is a really interesting fallback option, and profile is fairly similar to Jordan Kyrou. Any final thoughts on the Blues?
No, let's get out of here and never look back.
All right, let's get to the Tampa Bay Lightning now, who, if you missed it, yesterday's show, Brayden Point is out. So the lineup is in flux a little bit. Last game, Nick Paul was the one that moved up with Kucherov and Gensel. We also saw them take some shifts with Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov, and then Paul moving down with Gonzalez and Gensel. So I think this lineup is in a little bit of a state of flux here, trying to figure out what life without Brayden Point is going to look like exactly. But this is what it looked like for the most part in their first game without him. Let's get to their matchup spread really quickly. They're in St. Louis on Friday and in Dallas on Sunday. So not the best matchups ever, but I would say a little bit better than the Blues and definitely a lot more of a friendly team to stream this weekend. So who are you liking from the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Yeah, really just a couple of names I think to throw out here. The first and obvious one is Anthony Cirelli, center eligible, 37% owned, second power play unit, second line alongside Brandon Hagel. Obviously, if Kucherov slides down there or they move up with Kucherov, then that just does that much more for the floor and the ceiling here. But they've been steady regardless, the two of them, Hagel and Cirelli. Cirelli's got 6 points in his last 6 games. Hagel himself just red hot right now. So I think if you can grab his running mate Cirelli in those shallower formats, definitely a wise move this weekend, especially as you said, that lineup could change. You could see Kucherov there, and obviously, like I said, then just does wonders for the ceiling for Cirelli this weekend. And yeah, I think with Point going down, that was the obvious one to promote to the role of first line center next to Gensel and Kucherov, or at the very least next to Kucherov. You'd think it would be Cirelli, but yeah, in fact, it was Nick Paul, center left wing eligible, 2% owned. Center that line in the first game without Point on Tuesday. I think the encouraging thing, like you said, is the one mix-up they look to be going here if they're going to overload that top line is bringing Hagel and Cirelli up together. So at least Paul's still getting that exposure to Jake Gensel either way. Paul's production this season, nothing to write home about, just 11 points in 26 games, but he hasn't been seeing this sort of exposure to the Lightning's very best like he did on Tuesday. So I think he absolutely needs to be considered this weekend if he continues to play down the middle between Kucherov and Gensel, especially for that Friday night matchup against the Blues. As you said, it's a much tougher matchup on Sunday, but I think if you've got transactions to play with, maybe it's a one and done for Paul on Friday. Either way, I think he has to be in considerations if this lineup holds. Definitely going to be one you want to keep your eye on ahead of Friday night's matchup. And to me, that's really all there really is to be excited about on the wire from the Lightning this weekend. I do think in deeper formats, you can maybe take a shot on Oliver Bjorkstrand on the first power play unit alongside the likes of Kucherov, Gensel, Hagel, and Radish, but he is buried at 5v5 right now on the fourth line. Not the most exciting play, but that power play usage has proved to be a pretty steady source of production for him this weekend. Could help him find his way onto the score sheet again. So, but yeah, that's about it for me. Anyone else on the Lightning you want to shut out, Brock, before we wrap things up and move on to the goalies?
No, I was going to bring up Bjorkstrand. I think obviously, not a lot of 5v5 production to speak of. He's very reliant on that power play. So I do think he is a little bit of a roll of the dice. I think the other thing, I would probably not be rushing to the wire to pick up Nick Paul. I would wait to see what the lineup is going to look like. Because Anthony Cirelli was given 17 minutes and penalties in the last game, which really kind of hamstrung them and what they were planning on doing probably. And, rolling out a little bit more. Hagel, Cirelli, Kucherov. We've seen that trio spend a lot of time together this year already, and they've been very, very effective. So I think, Cirelli's quite clearly the number one option here. If Paul ends up sticking with Kucherov, then he, becomes a lot more interesting. But I wouldn't want to burn an ad, like you said, if he ends up getting moved down the lineup and they shuffle things around a little bit here. So, Anthony Cirelli looks like he is just in a fantastic spot. It would have been interesting and easier to talk about him if he wasn't giving, a fighting major, an instigator, and a 10 the other night, because we probably would have seen him play in like 20 minutes. Like, he's going to play so much. He's already a guy that plays a lot of ice time, but he's going to play so much ice time with Braden Point out of the lineup. So any final thoughts here before we move it along to the goalies?
No, I think we touched on it. Plenty of good options this weekend for a change, which is great to see.
Yeah, it feels like we've been scraping the bottom of the barrel here for the last couple of weeks. As always, let's talk about some goalies. Not a lot of options here as we head towards the weekend. Just 3 games on Sunday. The Dallas Stars host the Lightning on Sunday. Casey DeSmith potentially could be available for you in that start. They've been kind of rotating goalies. It seems it would be Jake Ottinger's turn tonight and then possibly Casey DeSmith on Sunday. The Red Wings, if I would imagine that it's going to be John Gibson in both of these games, although Cam Talbot did put forth a really nice performance the other night. So Cam Talbot potentially on Sunday could help you a lot against the Ottawa Senators. I'd be looking at him as one of my favorite targets. But in terms of the back-to-back goalies, the Edmonton Oilers in Vancouver on Saturday, hosting the Blues on Sunday. Obviously, that Blues matchup would be great. With Tristan Jarry back, unclear if Tristan Jarry is going to start again tonight at the moment of this recording. I imagine they'll probably give him a night off to kind of get back into the swing of things here after coming off an injury. So I imagine we'll see Connor Ingram on Thursday, possibly Jarry back on Saturday, and then I imagine we'll come back with Ingram on Sunday versus the Blues. So Ingram is the clear-cut best option if he starts on Sunday. 20% rostered right now. Obviously has a lot of win equity playing for the Oilers that we just talked about how bad the Blues are at scoring, especially right now. It all depends on Robert Thomas's status as well. Philip Broberg out. They're dealing with some injuries for a team that's already struggled. So Ingram, if he gets a start on Sunday against the Blues, would be a great option. Then the Ottawa Senators, they've got a back-to-back in hosting the Montreal Canadiens on Saturday, then in Detroit on Sunday. The Red Wings, not the friendliest matchup, and also, obviously the Senators goalies right now, we don't really know what's going on with Linus Ullmark, so it's probably going to be Levi Merilainen and James Reimer splitting the weekend, although Merilainen did just go back-to-back. I doubt they allow him to do that twice in a week. That seems insane to start 4 games in 6 days. And James Reimer, obviously, former Red Wing, too.
Yeah, it'd be 3 times in the last week and a half for Merilainen too. They did the same thing last week. So
so I guess it's possible. They just seem to be riding him into the ground. But there's a little bit of narrative here. Reimer's first start back against a team that he spent a lot of time with in Detroit would be kind of interesting. I don't think I trust James Reimer in that matchup at all. That would be an absolute Hail Mary desperation play. He started 1 game in the AHL and got absolutely torched. The Senators that's enough for us. We're signing him. And hasn't, obviously didn't get the start yesterday either. So Ingram would quite clearly be my favorite. Then possibly Cam Talbot if he ends up getting the start there. Obviously Joel Hofer's out there in a lot of leagues. If they continue to roll out Jordan Binnington for whatever reason, the matchup in Edmonton is obviously dreadful, but you could throw the dart there on Joel Hofer if he gets to start on Sunday. I would not be trusting Jordan Binnington if he's on your wire. And then Tampa Bay, I imagine it's going to be Vasilevsky, but Jonas Johansson has played admirably this year, and he'd be a bit of a desperation call as well. So nobody I really feel confident in outside of Connor Ingram this week. Anybody that you see or think would be a decent start?
No, it's tricky, man. There's only 3 games on the slate. I think if anything, Johansson would maybe get that game Friday in St. Louis, right? You got to imagine they'd go Vasilevsky in Dallas. Yeah, like you might, if you're chasing the goalie stats, like it could be if these start shake out the way we're expected, that you have to go with either Merrill playing a second game in as many nights, or Reimer in Detroit, or Hofer or Binnington in Edmonton. Like those could very well be the only options on the wire. I mean, especially more competitive leagues, like we talked about. I think you said Ingram's around 20%, but in those leagues that are kind of more up to date, he's not really going to be available right now, and I would expect him to kind of continue rotating as Jarry comes back because Ingram's played as well as he has. So yeah, I mean, other than that, you're just kind of hoping and praying that the Wings do go with Talbot against his former team in the Senators, although, you could probably apply that logic to half the league with Talbot. So yeah, and obviously I wouldn't expect, I mean, I'd be surprised. I know they've been rotating and Dismiss played well. I would still think the Stars want to go with their number one guy against the Lightning on Sunday. So I think there's a good chance that really you're just looking at potentially either a Blues or a Sens goalie off the wire on the weekend. And if that's the case, I would just direct you towards the betting lines. Just look at the money line, see which teams are actually given the most probable odds of coming out with the win, because you're really not going to be playing for splits at that point.
No, I agree. Obviously, we're in a competitive league together, and Connor Ingram's taken in that league. Casey DeSmith is not, so if DeSmith ends up getting the start, he might be available on your wire. He's somebody that gets streamed often and then quickly gets dropped. So DeSmith, not the friendliest matchup either, but he's somebody that you should definitely be keeping an eye on as well. That is going to do it for this edition of the DFO Fantasy Show. As always, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and always come back on Thursday. D will get you ready for the weekend, making sure you're maximizing those roster spots and picking up players that are going to play Friday, Sunday. Maximize those roster spots. Get as many games into your lineup over the weekend and hopefully steal some victories. Thank you so much, D. We'll see you back here next week.
Cheers, bud. Have a good one.
Thanks for watching this video. If you want more great fantasy hockey and betting content from myself, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, and the rest of the DFO analysts, make sure you subscribe to the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel today and never miss a minute.